What's happening, everybody? Stand by. About to go on here. Network. Ready? Okay, here we go. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me. Roll another one, just like the other one. You've been hanging on to it, and I sure would like a hit. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me. Don't bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me.
It's Monday. Woo!
Another one.
It's the Independent Broadcast Network.
Just like the other one. That one's just about burned to the end. So come on and
in the city. Man, city of Compton. I don't know. Wherever you are, wherever you go, wherever you've been, it's Californication.
Psychic spies from China try to steal your mind's elation, and little girls from Sweden dream of silver screen quotation. And if you want these kind of dreams, it's Californication.
going to a party. Meet me on after school. Well, going to a place where the jive is really cool. And if the band stops playing, there's a jukebox down the hall. And with your bluegrass on, your folks are all gone. Sure to give the guys a vibe. Get that.
Oh.
Got the man with the
And the girl in the collar is everyone's money. She could kill you with a wink of her eye.
Oh, yeah, it was electric, sopranically hectic. And the band started leaving, 'cause they all stopped breathing.
And the man in the back said everyone attack, and it turned into a ballroom blitz. And the girl in the corner said, boy, I wonder what it will turn into a ballroom blitz. Ballroom blitz.
Silicon chip inside her head gets switched to overload. And nobody's gonna go to school today. She's gonna make them stay at home. Daddy doesn't understand it. He always said she was good as gold. And he can see no reasons, 'cause there are no reasons. What reason do you need to be shown? Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. I wanna shoot the whole day down. Telex machine is kept so clean, and it types to a waiting world. A mother feels so shocked, father's world is rocked, and their thoughts turn to their own little girl. Sweet 16 ain't that peachy keen. Now it ain't so neat to admit defeat. They can see no reasons, 'cause there are no reasons. What reasons do you need? Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. I wanna shoot the whole day down, down, down. Shoot it on down. In the club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes just like cherry cola. C-O-L-A cola. She walked up to me and she asked me to dance. I asked her her name, and in a dark brown voice she said Lola. L-O-L-A Lola. La 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 Lola.
I'm not the world's most physical guy, but when she squeezed me tight, she nearly broke my spine. Oh my Lola, la 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 Lola. Well, I'm not dumb, but I can't understand.
Holly came from Miami, FLA, hitchhiked away across USA, plucked her eyebrows on the way, shaved her legs, and then he was a she. She says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side. Said, hey honey, take a walk on the wild side.
be changing your ways. I met a cheerleader, was a real young breed. All times I can reminisce. All the best things of loving with a sister and a cousin. Only started with a little kiss like this. Seesaw swinging with the balls in the school and your feet flying up. Now everybody, have you heard? If you're in the game, well, then the stroke's the word. Don't take no rhythm, don't take no style. You got a thirst for killing, grab your body. Woo! But you're right.
I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. I can't sleep cause my bed's on fire. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire. Psycho killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? 24 hours to go. I wanna be sedated. Nothing to do, nowhere to go. I wanna be sedated. Just give me to the airport, put me on a plane. Hurry, hurry, hurry. $69 US special.
I know I must remain inside this silent well of sorrow. A strand of silver hanging through the sky.
Be yourself, Once you have control over your mind, anything you want is possible. Control the mind. And you control the body.
It's the Independent Broadcasting Network. was only 30 minutes. Do you know how many songs I jammed in that 30 minutes? Trust me, go back and listen to it. That was live broadcasting on the Independent Broadcast Network. That's what it sounds like when a DJ's at the helms instead of just some playlist. Fully listener supported, so that red button in the microcosm.com. Feel free to throw a tip my way. But guarantee you that 30 minutes made you if you were listening to it, you forgot about whatever happened today. And now right now you're all why not? You know what? Why not have that piece of cheesecake? If that's what you feel like having. Why not? Go ahead. They say if you free your mind, your ass will follow. It's the Independent Broadcast Network. We're going to do Epic Journeyman and I are going to be doing a live broadcast later tonight at 9 p.m. Pacific for 1 hour for the TalkStream Live hour. All right, come back for that. It's important. 9 Pacific tonight. Here, Independent Broadcast Network exclusive.
street. You got to be able to pick out the easy meat with your eyes closed. Then moving silently downwind and out of sight. You've got to strike when the moment is right without thinking.
Podcast Network. My name's Jimmy. Gonna be here for an hour and 15 more minutes. I'm gonna do a mashup coming up here, second hour style. Prayers go out to your mom, Holly.
It seems to me that it might be interesting to sort of go over some of the things that have been called to my attention in nearly 67 years of work with people in trouble. Now, trouble is a rather common occurrence. Most people have a little of it as they go through life. Some feel they have more than their share. And at the present time, we may say in wide terms, the whole world is in trouble. But actually, there has to be a reason for this. And one of the reasons is that nearly all of us have to learn through experience. No matter how much good advice we receive, we have to do it our way. And sometimes we're right, and that's fine. But very often our way is not the best. And then, having made a serious mistake, our next problem is to try to blame it on someone else. This is quite normal, and with fair success we can find someone who apparently can be held responsible. All else failing, and no person being available, we have to cast our burden upon the Lord. Actually, when you begin to study it, you begin to realize what it's all about. All these responsibilities that we face are necessary to the growth of the person. Unless something of a problem developed along the way, the average person would never become mature. He would continue to go on living in a fool's paradise unless something happened to him which proved conclusively that it needed more intelligence, more stamina, more strength, more insight than he possessed. So that nearly all learning, all growth, is an effort to be more comfortable in a world of innumerable discomfortures. So we try to see what it's all about. Now, of course, some of the best mistakes we make are made at a time when we are least informed about life, and that is in childhood and early maturity. Inexperienced, without background in facing the realities of life, we make decisions that could influence our entire lifetime, and we have very little background reference frame upon which to make decisions. Of course, theoretically, young people are supposed to turn to their elders for instruction. Actually, this is less and less popular. Actually, the elder is not necessarily much better off, because he failed to turn to his elders when he was growing up. And we have a chain reaction of immaturity trying to adjust to the challenge of existence. So we have to try to figure out what we can do about all this. And we begin to study the problems of life, and we find that dispositions and temperaments are traceable to several different potential sources. There is a popular belief that we inherit certain dispositional tendencies. Whether this is true is still a matter of controversy. Some feel that we do not inherit these attitudes, but that we inherit bodies in which the chemical functions produce these attitudes and continue to do so generation after generation. We also have the belief that in some way or other, the individual brings with him into life some record, some understanding and insight from previous embodiment. This attitude is now generally held by a great many progressive thinkers. They feel that we're here to fulfill the law of karma. Now, to most people, the law of karma is simply retribution. Well, actually, the Sanskrit term is just as justified as a progress forward, happy circumstances, as it is unhappy circumstances. But the problem with karma has one weakness, which we are beginning to notice for the first time. And that is that it is not possible for the individual to bring into the present life a lesson depending entirely upon past existences. By the time he made the karma, he was living in a different type of world. The problems that we face today were unknown. Back in the time of the Caesars, no one was worrying over computers. Back in the Middle Ages of the Crusades, no one was really worrying very much about television. These blessings have come later. So we'll come into this world perhaps carrying certain wisdom that has universal meaning, but we are not prepared from the past for the exact situations of the moment. We have to therefore take certain basic characteristics of integrity and insight and try to apply them to circumstances that have never existed for us before. This makes a problem that is a little difficult, again, to adjust to. Now, there are also many who feel that some of our problems arise prenatally, that the unborn child is already being influenced by the world into which it is coming. If this is true, it might explain why nearly all children come into the world crying. If they've had a little taste of what's coming, I don't blame them. On the other hand, a lot of people have a good time. Many people are well treated. A great number of persons grow up in pleasant home life. But there's still in the world a great mass that has not had the proper protection during childhood periods. The parents have not done what they should do because they didn't know themselves what they should do, or if they did know, they found ways of avoiding the responsibility. So we come in here with all kinds of difficulties. Now, the most common difficulty that we have out of the past is neurosis. The person growing up is fortunate if he reaches maturity without being hurt in some way. He is fortunate if he has not been disillusioned in something. If he has not already found this world a very difficult place to live. And as a result of a series of happenings to himself, he begins to develop a neurotic tendency. He may be born in a family that is broken up shortly after his birth. He is then raised by one parent only. This cannot be helped, but it is still a basic cause for neurosis. As he goes along, a single-parent home may require considerable neglect of his needs and of his purposes, and he is forced to place himself in a secondary position in relation to income and finance. All these things dig down into the nature and just remain there as a series of gloomy attitudes, gloomy thoughts. And when various things happen, the individual kind of drops back into some of these occurrences to explain his present problems and his present weaknesses. So the problem of the neurotic tendency is nearly always associated with incidents which have developed early in life, which contain elements considered to be unfair, unreasonable, or beyond the power to accept and understand. So we take, for example, the broken home syndrome, which is now extremely common. To assume that this means nothing to the growing child is a delusion. I've had many people come to me in their 60s and 70s who have the most bitter reflections concerning the first 10 years of life. They blame most of the failures that they have passed through to the lack of companionship, support, understanding, insight, and affection, which they have lost in their opening years. Now, it might seem that these things are just transitory, that the individual, if he is given a fair education and meals and home and clothes, should be grateful for this. But there is something more than this. Maturity requires a development of affection, personal regards. It requires causes to champion, appreciation, interest, significance, and a certain amount of gentle but firm guidance along the earlier years of life. So if this is missing, the individual is in trouble. Now, alongside of him, belonging to another generation, is the person responsible for this situation. A person who found a broken home, or was caught in one, who had to go out to make a living to support herself and the child. Her life was neurotic and frustrated, and she passed these tendencies on to the child also. All these things are perfectly reasonable, perfectly natural, and more or less inevitable, but the result is neurosis. Now, as the person grows older, it is always possible to do something about neurosis. We don't have to continue to accept it indefinitely. We can find ways to grow out of a neurotic situation. To do this, however, requires a certain amount of conscious effort. The individual must try to make these adjustments. He must try to outgrow his own infirmities. But what happens? He comes along at 50 with all the infirmities and admits frankly that he hasn't been able to outgrow them. That perhaps in the daytime he could handle it, but at night the old dreams came back, the nightmares, the pressures of outrageous circumstances. And throughout life there is a certain psychic deformity set in, a crippling of the natural joy of life or the natural good spirit to face situations. All of this also means that there must be some corrections possible. And now we're beginning to recognize these corrections. Education is not only teaching the individual the ABCs or preparing him for a profession or occupation. Education must help young people to get over the scars of neglect, misunderstanding, and false pressures of society. The child, the young person growing up, must be taught to be stronger than circumstances, must be taught to recognize the real meaning of the things that happen to him. Everything happens for a reason. If the happening dominates, the life is damaged. If the individual takes hold of the happiness of the happening and understands it, then there is a definite forward motion. So the problem of finding explanations for pressures must be and should be part of the training of every young person. He should be taught to overcome the limitations and restrictions of his own childhood. Now, if he has been a very happy child and has been well taken care of, you may say that this is not reasonable or necessary. It wouldn't be in this case. But then there are other factors that sneak in. One of the worst of these is the spoiled child. The child who has everything. The child who everyone idolizes. The child who it is hoped will never have to do an honest day's work as long as it lives. This type of child is also pampered and lives in a kind of psychological paradise through these early years. But somewhere along the line, the angel comes and casts the young person out of paradise into the very tough and difficult world which he is going to have to face. When this happens, the spoiled child is at a great disadvantage. He expects to be pampered all his life. It develops into the way of which he thinks, his job in which he attempts to establish himself, and if he marries, he expects to be pampered by his wife. All these things become the basis of trouble. And in this trouble, the pampered person gradually comes under the neurotic pressures of his own unfortunate background and gradually develops bad habits. Many neurotics going to narcotics or alcoholism. Now, this is a long story, but somewhere along the way, philosophy has to step in and try to do something about it. One person out of every 3, probably, is a potential neurotic. This is because the ailment hits in so many different ways at so many different periods in life. Many are affected collectively by war, others by Great Depression, still others by pestilences. All kinds of negative circumstances create the havoc which gradually eats into the optimism of the person. Now, against this external pressure, there has to be internal resource.
Trouble, oh, trouble set me free.
My name's Jimmy.
I've seen your face and it's too much for me.
We're mashing up some Manly P. Hall with some Buckethead. You guys seem like you liked that last night, and I did too, because I get to listen to it too, so why the hell not? So in the meantime, I'm just taking a quick break from the man to let you know it's the Independent Broadcast Network. And here's the Cat Stevens.
So won't you be fair?
And then we'll get right back. And I got a surprise for you later.
I don't want no more of you. So won't you be kind to me? Just let me go where I have to go there. Trouble, trouble, move away. I have seen your face and it's too much for me today. Trouble, trouble, can't you see? You have made me a wreck, now won't you leave me in my misery?
can see death's disguise hanging on me, hanging on me. I'm beat, I'm torn, shattered and tossed and worn. Too shocking to see, too shocking to see. Trouble, oh, trouble, move from me. I have paid my debt, now won't you leave in my misery? Trouble.
This is the Independent Broadcast Network. Mine's Jimmy. It's time to have a martini with the man, or whatever you're drinking. Let's get back into this conversation. You know, I'll tell you this about the man. You ever have a book and then you look at it and you close it and then you just open it up and point at it and then look at what you point at, and then whatever it says right there is your message? You ever think about that? It's the same thing with these Manly P. Halls. You know, you go, there's so many of them. You go listen to some of these lectures, you go pick one, and magically it'll be the one you needed to hear for whatever reason. So mine's Jimmy, and who knows, maybe you needed to hear some of this shit.
Presented him with a new point in life, a new realization of facts. The fact that he came from a broken home made him one with thousands of other young people who come from broken homes. These problems have to be solved. The individual who has no support from family must develop as early as possible support from within himself. And in the periods of neurotic pressures all the way to the end of life, the great answer lies in taking hold of it, the problem, whatever it is, and transforming it into its message, revealing once and all that it is capable of being a tremendous advantage to the person to have gone through these difficulties. It's hard to believe that, perhaps, but those who have triumphed over the weaknesses of themselves are the world's best people. Those who have too easy a life get into trouble later. But it is possible for those who have had a too difficult a life to smooth it out and have a serenity of years when the time is right. Also, we have to realize that many families, cruelty is a factor. Children are cruelly treated. Adults are cruelly treated. And cruelty is something that is very difficult for a sensitive person to understand. In the case of cruelty, the victim very often becomes belligerent and strikes back and tries to fight their way out of the dilemma. They begin to develop hatreds and antagonisms that go through life. And sometimes they develop a revengeful determination to hurt others as they have been hurt. Now this again is simply a sign of ignorance and weakness. Most of these problems exist and go on existing generation after generation because they have not been met at their beginning by our educational system. We educate an individual as though he was really a kind of well-oiled machine. We do not recognize the actual individuality of the individual. We do not realize that each of the children in a class in school is a different person, with a different background, with a different reaction to the pressures of environment, with a different ability or lack of ability to understand the meaning of what they are trying to learn. So it becomes very important, if possible, that the child should have a type of education included, by means of which optimism and understanding, sympathy and adjustment and the forgiveness of evils, all this has to be part of the education if the person is not going to be a neurotic. Now, religion does a great deal for this in some cases. But on the other hand, we suddenly develop another problem, and that is the religious neurotic, whose trouble isn't that he lacks religion, but he lacks the way to handle it. And he also very likely belongs to some conservative group and finds it necessary to constantly impose his religious convictions upon other people. And one of the quickest ways of becoming a neurotic is to try to convert somebody else. Because each person has his own way of doing things and has the priceless realization, or belief at least, that he is entitled to his own life way. Religion can help, however. Religion can help to preserve the moral code of the person. And the stronger the moral code, the more easily he may be able to handle the pressures of outside. If he has a strong conscience within himself, he can avoid most of the pitfalls which could cause him definite trouble. But the strong conscience factor is slowly fading out of society. Today, the average person is not guided by conscience, but is guided by convenience. The individual wishes to do that which he wishes to do regardless of consequences. And as a result of this, he lands with a counselor who can do very little for him. They can help, but they cannot help a person to get over his dispositional peculiarities until he is fully convinced he's better off without them. He will try, usually, to get rid of the things that don't mean much. But it sometimes takes a long time to dig into a person's inner life and reach the really sore spot. He has it carefully covered. He has it upholstered in every way possible. He nurses his problem as though it was the most vital part of himself. The more he nurses it, the more trouble he's in. But he is going to conceal it. He will reveal minor faults of temperament and try to get away without touching the major one. And it takes a long time, because until he gets to the major one, his life will never straighten out. A lot of it can be done by working with the religious side of human life. Religion, to be useful, must be non-dogmatic. It must be tolerant and it must be gentle, but it must be firm, and it must teach the individual to seek the good in everything and be willing to recognize the good even if he doesn't like it. One of the apocryphal statements attributed to Jesus relates to the time when the disciples were walking along the road and saw the decaying carcass of a dog. The disciples drew back in horror at the unhappy sight. Jesus stood and looked at the animal for a couple of minutes and then turned to the disciples and said, "Pearls are not whiter than its teeth." To find the pearl in the dilemma is very important. Yet in everything somewhere there is something good, something valuable, something that teaches us what to do or something that teaches us what not to do. All the way along, life is trying to press us toward accomplishment. The more we resist accomplishment, the more steadily it prods us on, often to a great deal of discomfiture. But we must try, in every incident that comes along, to get the message, to see whether or not we are handling it. If when the message comes along that a problem is approaching, are we ready for it? Are we sufficiently integrated within ourselves to be able to handle a moderate-sized difficulty with dignity? The big difficulty might take a little more practice, but a moderate-sized one should be handled with dignity by the average person. Now, if this problem comes along and the individual fights it, that isn't dignity. Denies its existence, that isn't intelligence. The answer to the problem is it must be solved. Now, in some religions and some philosophies, the effort is made to throw these problems on the Lord. and when we don't know what to do next, to ask for divine help. That is perfectly proper and correct if we have used every available resource of our own first. If we have done the very best that could be done, and the problem is completely beyond our control, then we must resort to the divine will. But we do not like that usually, because while we say, "Let thy will be done," underneath this, we have a sort of a little sub-voice that says, "Let my will be done." We want it our way, and we hope God sees it that way. Because if he doesn't, we're in trouble. But we must try in the beginning to find out what the problem can be, how it can be handled by ourselves. Are we shirking it? Are we afraid to take it on? Is it more comfortable to suffer? Many people have the most joyous time suffering. But, unfortunately, very few of us can suffer alone. And the professional sufferer generally makes many other people miserable also. So that isn't a good answer. The good answer is to realize that the individual himself is capable of solving any problem that he faces. If it is completely beyond his capacity, it isn't even a problem. He doesn't know it exists. But if it touches any part of his own experience, he should be able to make a fairly dignified solution. Now, another type of problem that comes along, we find, is loneliness. Loneliness is something that sometimes appears to be very unkind and very unreasonable. Yet in the long run of things, loneliness is the common state of everything that exists. The smallest little bug and the greatest star is alone. Loneliness is inevitable, because between each individual and the world around him is the vast complex of his own personality. He must bridge across from an inner nature to an outer life. In most cases, this bridging is not effective. Not all it should be, at least. But in every case in that life, there comes a time when we must learn to get along with ourselves and learn for once and for all that we can be good company to ourselves. We can find all kinds of things to do to counteract loneliness. We can develop avocational interests. We can take on responsibilities for the simple pleasure and simple opportunity of service. We can do all kinds of things to break up the concept of loneliness if we really want to. But once we get a certain degree of aloneness, the tendency is to stay with it, to nurse it, to become less and less adjusted, and to finally end up by being antisocial in every sense of the word. Now, the person who declares war on society is actually declaring war on the university of life. The individual who walks out on his own world, walks out on his responsibilities because he doesn't like them, and is therefore able to develop a beautiful argument why he shouldn't accept them. This person is avoiding the normal burdens of living. He's bound to be lonely in the end. A lonely person is one who has not been a friend, a true one, therefore cannot have a friend. But every lonely person has a privilege of something that other people do not have. For example, a family in which all the members are busily engaged has very little loneliness but very little privacy. There are times when each individual should be alone. Alone to think through things, alone to put his own life in order, alone to meditate upon the larger realities of things. So that loneliness is actually a condition that must precede the experience of enlightenment. The enlightenment of the wise destroys forever the illusion of loneliness. The person who has found his own center finds with it a world of marvelous opportunities and privileges. The individual finds the universe friendly instead of frightening. He finds the life he's living rewarding instead of punishing. These things have to happen within the person. They cannot be delegated by others. We can feed and clothe other people in their emergencies, but we cannot bring happiness to an inner life. Each person must do it for himself. And the ancients and the moderns also have come to the conclusion that the most perfect way to attain happiness is to stop trying to be happy. Rather, trying to do better things, trying to help more, trying to learn more, trying to love more. These things are the sources of associations that are permanent and valuable. So in religion we have this problem. I know one case of a young woman who was about to be married when her fiancé was killed in war. She was in her early 20s with a broken heart. In her early 80s, she still had the broken heart. Never got over it. In her middle 50s, took holy orders and remained the rest of her life in a nunnery. She was never able to transcend this disaster. Many people thought that she was very religious, very devout, and very conscientious. She was all these things, but she cut off her life. A tragedy which she could not help took away from her the only thing she thought could ever make her happy. And because she thought that way, she was never happy again. This type of circumstance must be overcome because it destroys the value of lives. It frustrates the entire purpose of growth. This young woman should have had a proper season of regret and mourning. She should have been hurt to a proper degree, and then she should have gathered herself up and found things to do. If she couldn't be happy, maybe she could make others happy. And it was far better to do that than to bury herself in a religious house. So everyone has to make adjustments and make decisions as they come along. Another case, quite different but with the same general pattern, was that in which a young woman was 50 years the total slave of her own widowed mother. This widowed mother, who loved her devoutly, and the daughter who loved her mother devoutly, formed a little package, too small a package, of frustrations which prevented either one from advancing in any noticeable or recognizable degree. By the time the mother died in her 90s, the daughter's life was useless. Therefore, a strange sadness came over the daughter, which was quite understandable. But finally, she also took solace in religion. So religion is a kind of mechanism by means of which a great deal of sadness, solitude, and frustration will find some comfort. Not a solution, but a solace. Not an answer to the problem, but a way to carry it a little easier. So with all these problems, it all comes around to how do we carry them a little more easily. And I think most of our people that are thoughtful people know about these types of things. When in doubt as to what to do, forget yourself. Forget all that has happened to you. Stop telling all your friends your miseries. Get over constantly regretting this, something you did at 20 was ruined your life. Get rid of the fact that the past can destroy the future. It can't unless you let it. Therefore, those who have suffered in the past should not carry their sufferings into the future. In fact, they shouldn't have carried them into the present. Those who have had various unhappy happenings, some of which may involve guilt mechanisms, must realize that the person who performed those happenings 50 years ago is not the same person as the one who is living today. They say that every 7 years, every cell in the human body changes. And it is also true that in the course of a lifetime, every cell in the human soul changes. Life becomes different. the person who made a mistake in the past is not the same person who is alive now. And there is nothing binding this person to the past but memory. And memories, while you cannot destroy them, you must learn to use them and not let them abuse you. Now, one way to handle a memory situation very carefully is to go back to the occasion and see whether or not you really understood it when it happened. Were you really actually as blamed as you think you were? Were you in those days far enough advanced in thought, understanding, in insight to make a corrective decision? If out of simple ignorance you did the wrong thing, if out of simple lack of insight and understanding you made mistakes, so what? Everyone makes them. The mistakes of the first 20 years of life are always present, or nearly always, in some form. But there is no reason why they should be projected into modern time.
I'd like
They
to tell
should
you
never
about
be
the
allowed
strangest
to
secret
cloud.
in the world. Some years ago, the late Nobel Prize-winning Dr. Albert Schweitzer was being interviewed in London, and a reporter asked him, "Doctor, what's wrong with men today?" And the great doctor was silent a moment, and then he said, "Men simply don't think." It's about this that I want to talk with you. We live today in a golden age. This is an era that man has looked forward to, dreamed of, and worked toward for thousands of years. But since it's here, we pretty well take it for granted. We in America are particularly fortunate to live in the richest land that ever existed on the face of the earth, a land of abundant opportunity for everyone. But do you know what happens? Well, let's take 100 men who start even at the age of 25. Do you have any idea what will happen to those men by the time they're 65? These 100 men who all start even at the age of 25 believe they're going to be successful. If you ask any one of these men if he wanted to be a success, he'd tell you he did. And you'd notice that he was eager toward life, that there was a certain sparkle to his eye, an erectness to his carriage, and life seemed like a pretty interesting adventure to him. But by the time they're 65, 1 will be rich. 4 will be financially independent. 5 will still be working. 54 will be broke. Now think a moment. Out of the 100, only 5 make the grade. Now why do so many fail? What has happened to the sparkle that was there when they were 25? What's become of the dreams, the hopes, the plans? And why is there such a large disparity between what these men intended to do and what they actually accomplished? When we say about 5% achieve success, we have to define success. And here's the best definition I've ever been able to find. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. If a man is working toward a predetermined goal and knows where he's going, that man is a success. If he's not doing that, he's a failure. Success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. Rollo May, the distinguished psychiatrist, wrote a wonderful book called Man's Search for Himself. And in this book he says, the opposite of courage in our society is not cowardice. It is conformity. And there you have the trouble today. It's conformity, people acting like everyone else without knowing why, without knowing where they're going. Now think of it. In America right now, there are over 18 million people 65 years of age and older. And most of them are broke. They're dependent on someone else for life's necessities. Now, we learn to read by the time we're 7. We learn to make a living by the time we're 25. Usually by that time, we're not only making a living, we're supporting a family. And yet by the time we're 65, we haven't learned how to become financially independent in the richest land that has ever been known. Why? We conform. And the trouble is that we're acting like the wrong percentage group, the 95 who don't succeed. Now, why do these people conform? Well, they really don't know. These people believe that their lives are shaped by circumstances, by things that happen to them, by exterior forces. They're outer-directed people. A survey was made one time that covered a lot of men, working men, and these men were asked, why do you work? Why do you get up in the morning? 19 out of 20 had no idea. If you ask them, they'll say, well, everyone goes to work in the morning, and that's the reason they do it, because everyone else is doing it. Now let's get back to our definition of success. Who succeeds? The only person who succeeds is the person who is progressively realizing a worthy ideal. He's the person who says, I'm going to become this, and then begins to work toward that goal. I'll tell you who the successful people are. A success is the school teacher who's teaching school because that's what he or she wants to do. The success is the woman who's a wife and mother because she wanted to become a wife and mother and is doing a good job of it. The success is the man who runs the corner gas station because that was his dream. That's what he wanted to do. The success is the successful salesman who wants to become a top-notch salesman and grow and build with his organization. A success is anyone who is doing deliberately a predetermined job because that's what he decided to do deliberately. But only 1 out of 20 does that. That's why today there isn't really any competition unless we make it for ourselves. Instead of competing, all we have to do is create. You know, for 20 years, I looked for the key which would determine what would happen to a human being. Was there a key I wanted to know which would make the future a promise that we could foretell to a large extent? Was there a key that would guarantee a person's becoming successful if he only knew about it and knew how to use it? Well, there is such a key, and I found it. Have you ever wondered why so many men work so hard and honestly without ever achieving anything in particular, and others don't seem to work hard and yet seem to get everything? They seem to have the magic touch. You've heard them say that about someone. Everything he touches turns to gold. And have you ever noticed that a man who becomes successful tends to continue to become successful? And on the other hand, have you noticed how a man who's a failure tends to continue to fail? Well, it's because of goals. Some of us have goals, some don't. People with goals succeed because they know where they're going. It's that simple. Think of a ship leaving a harbor, and think of it with the complete voyage mapped out and planned. The captain and crew know exactly where it's going and how long it'll take. It has a definite goal. Now, 9,999 times out of 10,000, it will get to where it started out to get. Now let's take another ship, just like the first, only let's not put a crew on it or a captain at the helm. Let's give it no aiming point, no goal, no destination. We just start the engines and let it go. I think you'll agree with me that if it gets out of the harbor at all, it will either sink or wind up on some deserted beach, a derelict. It can't go anyplace because it has no destination and no guidance, and it's the same with a human being. Take the salesman, for example. There's no other person in the world today with the future of a good salesman. Selling is the world's highest paid profession, if we're good at it, and if we know where we're going. Every company needs top-notch salesmen, and they reward those men. The sky's the limit for them. But how many can you find? Someone once said the human race is fixed, not to prevent the strong from winning, but to prevent the weak from losing. The American economy today can be likened to a convoy in time of war. The entire economy is slowed down to protect its weakest link, just as the convoy had to go at the speed that would permit its slowest vessel to remain in formation. That's why it's so easy to make a living today. It takes no particular brains or talent to make a living and support a family today. So we have a plateau of so-called security, if that's what a person's looking for. But we do have to decide how high above this plateau we want to aim. Now let's get back to the strangest secret in the world, the story that I wanted to tell you today. Why do men with goals succeed in life and men without them fail? Well, let me tell you something which, if you really understand it, will alter your life immediately. If you understand completely what I'm going to tell you from this moment on, your life will never be the same again. You will suddenly find that good luck just seems to be attracted to you. The things you want just seem to fall in line, and from now on you won't have the problems, the worries, the gnawing lump of anxiety that perhaps you've experienced before. Doubt, fear, well, they'll be things of the past. Here's the key to success and the key to failure. We become what we think about. Now let me say that again. We become what we think about. Throughout all history, the great wise men and teachers, philosophers and prophets have disagreed with one another on many different things. It's only on this one point that they are in complete and unanimous agreement. Listen to what Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor, said. A man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Disraeli said this: everything comes if a man will only wait. I've brought myself by long meditation to the conviction that a human being with a settled purpose must accomplish it, and that nothing can resist a will that will stake even existence for its fulfillment. Ralph Waldo Emerson said this: a man is what he thinks about all day long. William James said, the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering their attitudes of mind. And he also said, we need only in cold blood act as if the thing in question were real, and it will become infallibly real by growing into such a connection with our life that it will become real. It will become so knit with habit and emotion that our interest in it will be those which characterize belief. And he also said, if you only care enough for a result, you will almost certainly attain it. If you wish to be rich, you will be rich. If you wish to be learned, you will be learned. If you wish to be good, you will be good. Only you must then really wish these things and wish them exclusively, and not wish at the same time 100 other incompatible things just as strongly. In the Bible, you read in Mark 9:23, if thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. My old friend Dr. Norman Vincent Peale put it this way, this is one of the greatest laws in the universe. Fervently do I wish I had discovered it as a very young man. It dawned upon me much later in life, and I found it to be one of the greatest, if not my greatest discovery outside of my relationship to God. The great law, briefly and simply stated, is that if you think in negative terms, you will get negative results. If you think in positive terms, you will achieve positive results. That is the simple fact, he went on to say, which is at the basis of an astonishing law of prosperity and success. In 3 words, believe and succeed. William Shakespeare put it this way, our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win by fearing to attempt. George Bernard Shaw said, people are always blaming their circumstances for what they are. I don't believe in circumstances. The people who get on in this world are the people who get up and look for the circumstances they want, and if they can't find them, make them. Well, it's pretty apparent, isn't it? And every person who discovered this for a while believed that he was the first one to work it out. We become what we think about. Now, it stands to reason that a person who's thinking about a concrete and worthwhile goal is going to reach it, because that's what he's thinking about, and we become what we think about. Conversely, the man who has no goal, who doesn't know where he's going, and whose thoughts must therefore be thoughts of confusion and anxiety and fear and worry, becomes what he thinks about. His life becomes one of frustration and fear and anxiety and worry. And if he thinks about nothing, he becomes nothing. Now, how does it work? Why do we become what we think about? Well, I'll tell you how it works as far as we know. Now, to do this, I want to tell you about a situation that parallels the human mind. Suppose a farmer has some land, and it's good fertile land. Now, the land gives the farmer a choice. He may plant in that land whatever he chooses. The land doesn't care. It's up to the farmer to make the decision. Now, remember, we're comparing the human mind with the land because the mind, like the land, doesn't care what you plant in it. It will return what you plant, but it doesn't care what you plant. Now let's say that the farmer has 2 seeds in his hand. One is a seed of corn, the other is nightshade, a deadly poison. He digs 2 little holes in the earth and he plants both seeds, one corn, the other nightshade. He covers up the holes, waters, and takes care of the land, and what will happen? Invariably the land will return what's planted. As it's written in the Bible, as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Now remember, the land doesn't care. It'll return poison in just as wonderful abundance as it will corn. So up come the 2 plants, one corn, one poison. Now, the human mind is far more fertile, far more incredible and mysterious than the land, but it works the same way. It doesn't care what we plant. Success, failure. A concrete, worthwhile goal, or confusion. Misunderstanding, fear, anxiety, and so on. But what we plant, it must return to us. You see, the human mind is the last great unexplored continent on Earth. It contains riches beyond our wildest dreams. It will return anything we want to plant. Now, you might say, well, if that's true, why don't people use their minds more? Well, I think they figured out an answer to that one, too. Our mind comes as standard equipment at birth. It's free, and things that are given to us for nothing we place little value on. Things that we pay money for, we value. The paradox is that exactly the reverse is true. Everything that's really worthwhile in life came to us free. Our minds, our souls, our bodies, our hopes, our dreams, our ambitions, our intelligence, our love of family and children and friends and country, all these priceless possessions are free. But the things that cost us money are actually very cheap and can be replaced at any time. A good man can be completely wiped out and make another fortune. He can do that several times. Even if our home burns down, we can rebuild it. But the things we got for nothing, we can never replace. The human mind isn't used because we take it for granted. Familiarity breeds contempt. It can do any kind of job we assign to it, but generally speaking, we use it for little jobs instead of big, important ones. Universities have proved that most of us are operating on about 10% or less of our abilities. So decide now, what is it you want? Plant your goal in your mind, It's the most important decision you ever make in your entire life. What is it you want? Do you want to be an outstanding salesman? A better worker at your particular job? Do you want to go places in your company? In your community? Do you want to get rich? All you've got to do is plant that seed in your mind, care for it, work steadily toward your goal, and it will become a reality. It not only will, there's no way that it cannot. You see, that's a law, like the laws of Sir Isaac Newton, the laws of gravity. If you get on top of a building and jump off, you'll always go down. You'll never go up, and it's the same with all the other laws of nature. They always work. They're inflexible. Think about your goal in a relaxed, positive way. Picture yourself in your mind's eye as having already achieved this goal. See yourself doing the things you will be doing when you've reached your goal. Ours has been called the phenobarbital age, the age of ulcers and nervous breakdowns and tranquilizers. At a time when medical research has raised us to a new plateau of good health and longevity, far too many of us worry ourselves into an early grave trying to cope with things in our own little personal ways without learning a few great laws that will take care of everything for us. These things we bring on ourselves through our habitual way of thinking. Every one of us is the sum total of his own thoughts. He is where he is because that's exactly where he really wants to be, whether he'll admit that or not. Each of us must live off the fruit of his thoughts in the future, because what you think today and tomorrow, next month and next year, will mold your life and determine your future. You're guided by your mind. I remember one time I was driving through eastern Arizona, and I saw one of those giant earth-moving machines roaring along the road at about 35 miles an hour with what looked like 30 tons of dirt in it. A tremendous, incredible machine. And there was a little man perched way up on top with the wheel in his hands guiding it. And as I drove along, I was struck by the similarity of that machine to the human mind. Just suppose you're sitting at the controls of such a vast source of energy. Are you going to sit back and fold your arms and let it run itself into a ditch? Or are you going to keep both hands firmly on the wheel and control and direct this power to a specific, worthwhile purpose? It's up to you. You're in the driver's seat. You see, the very law that gives us success is a two-edged sword. We must control our thinking. The same rule that can lead a man to a life of success, wealth, happiness, and all the things he ever dreamed of for himself and his family. That very same law can lead him into the gutter. It's all in how he uses it, for good or for bad. This is the strangest secret in the world. Now, why do I say it's strange, and why do I call it a secret? Actually, it isn't a secret at all. It was first promulgated by some of the earliest wise men, and it appears again and again throughout the Bible, but very few people have learned it, understand it. That's why it's strange, and why for some equally strange reason it virtually remains a secret. I believe that you could go out and walk down the main street of your town and ask one man after another what the secret of success is, and you probably wouldn't run into one man in a month who could tell you. Now, this information is enormously valuable to us if we really understand it and apply it. It's valuable to us not only for our own lives, but the lives of those around us, our families, employees, associates, and friends. Life should be an exciting adventure. It should never be a bore. A man should live fully, be alive. He should be glad to get out of bed in the morning. He should be doing a job he likes to do because he does it well. One time I heard Grove Patterson, the great late editor-in-chief of the Toledo Daily Blade, make a speech, and as he concluded his speech, he said something I've never forgotten. He said, "My years in the newspaper business have convinced me of several things. Among them, that people are basically good, and that we came from someplace, and we're going someplace. So we should make our time here an exciting adventure. The architect of the universe didn't build a stairway leading nowhere." And the greatest teacher of all, the carpenter from the plains of Galilee, gave us the secret time and time again. As ye believe, so shall it be done unto you. I've explained the strangest secret in the world and how it works. Now, on this side, I want to explain how you can prove to yourself the enormous returns possible in your own life by putting this secret to a practical test. I want you to make a test that will last 30 days. It isn't going to be easy, but if you'll give it a good try, it will completely change your life for the better. Now, back in the 17th century, Sir Isaac Newton, the English mathematician and natural philosopher, gave us some natural laws of physics which apply as much to human beings as they do to the movement of bodies in the universe. And one of these laws is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Simply stated, as it applies to you and me, it means we can achieve nothing without paying the price. The results of your 30-day experiment will be in direct proportion to the effort you put forth. To be a doctor, you must pay the price of long years of difficult study. To be successful in selling, and remember that each of us succeeds to the extent of his ability to sell. Selling our families on our ideas, selling education in schools, selling our children on the advantages of living the good and honest life, selling our associates and employees on the importance of being exceptional people. To, of course, the profession of selling itself. But to be successful in selling our way to the good life, we must be willing to pay the price. Now, what is that price? Well, it's many things. First, it's understanding emotionally, as well as intellectually, that we literally become what we think about, that we must control our thoughts if we're to control our lives. It's understanding fully that as ye sow, so shall ye reap. Second, it's cutting away all fetters from the mind and permitting it to soar as it was divinely designed to do. It's the realization that your limitations are self-imposed and that the opportunities for you today are enormous beyond belief. It's rising above narrow-minded pettiness and prejudice. And third, it's using all your courage to force yourself to think positively on your own problem, to set a definite and clearly defined goal for yourself, to let your marvelous mind think about your goal from all possible angles, to let your imagination speculate freely upon many different possible solutions, to refuse to believe that there are any circumstances sufficiently strong to defeat you in the accomplishment of your purpose, to act promptly and decisively when your course is clear, and to keep constantly aware of the fact that you are, at this moment, standing in the middle of your own acres of diamonds, as Russell Conwell used to point out. And fourth, save at least 10% of every dollar you earn. It's also remembering that no matter what your present job, it has enormous possibilities if you're willing to pay the price. Now let's just go over the important points in the price each of us must pay to achieve the wonderful life that can be ours. It is, of course, worth any price. 1. You will become what you think about. 2. Remember the word imagination and let your mind begin to soar. 3. Courage. Concentrate on your goal every day. 4. Save 10% of what you earn. And 5. Action. Ideas are worthless unless we act on them. Now, I'll try to outline the 30-day test I want you to make. Keep in mind that you have nothing to lose by making this test and everything you could possibly want to gain. There are two things that may be said of everyone. Each of us wants something, and each of us is afraid of something. I want you to write on a card what it is you want more than anything else. It may be more money. Perhaps you'd like to double your income or make a specific amount of money. It may be a beautiful home. It may be success at your job. It may be a particular position in life. It could be a more harmonious family. Each of us wants something. Now write down on your card specifically what it is you want. Make sure it's a single goal and clearly defined. You needn't show it to anyone, but carry it with you so that you can look at it several times a day. Think about it in a cheerful, relaxed, positive way each morning when you get up. And immediately you have something to work for, something to get out of bed for, something to live for. Look at it every chance you get during the day and just before going to bed at night. And as you look at it, remember that you must become what you think about, and since you're thinking about your goal, you realize that soon it will be yours. In fact, it's yours really the moment you write it down and begin to think about it. Look at the abundance all around you as you go about your daily business. You have as much right to this abundance as any other living creature. It's yours for the asking. Now we come to the difficult part. Difficult because it means the formation of what is probably a brand new habit, and new habits are not easily formed. Once formed, however, it will follow you for the rest of your life. Stop thinking about what it is you fear. Each time a fearful or negative thought comes into your consciousness, replace it with a mental picture of your positive and worthwhile goal. And there'll come times when you'll feel like giving up. It's easier for a human being to think negatively than positively. That's why only 5% are successful. You must begin now to place yourself in that group. For 30 days, you must take control of your mind. It will think about only what you permit it to think about. Each day for this 30-day test, do more than you have to do. In addition to maintaining a cheerful, positive outlook, give of yourself more than you've ever done before. Do this knowing that your returns in life must be in direct proportion to what you give. The moment you decide on a goal to work toward, you're immediately a successful person. You are then in that rare and successful category of people who know where they're going. Out of every 100 people, you belong to the top 5. Don't concern yourself too much with how you're going to achieve your goal. Leave that completely to a power greater than yourself. All you have to do is know where you're going. The answers will come to you of their own accord and at the right time. Remember these words from the Sermon on the Mount, and remember them well. Keep them constantly before you this month of your test. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. It's as marvelous and as simple as that. In fact, it's so simple that in our seemingly complicated world, it's difficult for an adult to understand that all he needs is a purpose and faith. For 30 days, do your very best. If you're a salesman, go at it as you've never done before, not in a hectic fashion, but with the calm, cheerful assurance that time well spent will give you the abundance in return you deserve and want. If you're a homemaker, devote your 30-day test to completely giving of yourself without thinking about receiving anything in return, and you'll be amazed at the difference it makes in your life. No matter what your job, do it as you've never done it before for 30 days. And if you've kept your goal before you every day, you'll wonder and marvel at this new life you've found. Dorothea Brand, the outstanding editor and writer, discovered it for herself and tells about it in her fine book, Wake Up and Live. Her entire philosophy is reduced to the words, act as though it were impossible to fail. She made her own test with sincerity and faith, and her entire life was changed to one of overwhelming success. Now, you make your test for 30 full days. Don't start your test until you've made up your mind to stick with it. You see, by being persistent, you're demonstrating faith. Persistence is simply another word for faith. If you didn't have faith, you'd never persist. If you should fail during your first 30 days, by that I mean suddenly find yourself overwhelmed by negative thoughts, you've got to start over again from that point and go 30 more days. Gradually, your new habit will form until you find yourself one of that wonderful minority to whom virtually nothing is impossible. And don't forget the card. It's vitally important as you begin this new way of living. On one side of the card, write your goal, whatever it may be. On the other side, write the words we've quoted from the Sermon on the Mount. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Nothing great was ever accomplished without inspiration. See that during these crucial first 30 days, your own inspiration is kept at a peak. And above all, don't worry. Worry brings fear, and fear is crippling. The only thing that can cause you to worry during your test is trying to do it all yourself. Know that all you have to do is hold your goal before you. Everything else will take care of itself. Remember also to keep calm and cheerful. Don't let petty things annoy you and get you off course. Now, since making this test is difficult, some will say, why should I bother? Well, look at the alternative. No one wants to be a failure. No one really wants to be a mediocre individual. No one wants a life constantly filled with worry and fear and frustration. Therefore, remember that you must reap that which you sow. If you sow negative thoughts, your life will be filled with negative things. If you sow positive thoughts, your life will be cheerful, successful, and positive. Now, gradually, you will have a tendency to forget what you've heard on this recording. Play it often. Keep reminding yourself of what you must do to form this new habit. Gather your whole family around at regular intervals and listen to what's been said here. You know, most men will tell you that they want to make money without understanding the law. The only people who make money work in a mint. The rest of us must earn money. This is what causes those who keep looking for something for nothing or a free ride to fail in life. The only way to earn money is by providing people with services or products which are needed and useful. We exchange our time and our product or service for the other man's money. Therefore, the law is that our financial return will be in direct proportion to our service. Now, success is not the result of making money. Making money is the result of success, and success is in direct proportion to our service. Most people have this law backwards. They believe that you're successful if you earn a lot of money. The truth is that you can only earn money after you're successful. It's like the story of the man who sat in front of the stove and said to it, give me heat, and then I'll add the wood. How many men and women do you know, or do you suppose there are today, who take the same attitude toward life? There are millions. We've got to put the fuel in before we can expect heat. Likewise, we've got to be of service first before we can expect money. Don't concern yourself with the money. Be of service, build, work, dream, create. Do this and you'll find there's no limit to the prosperity and abundance that will come to you. Prosperity, you know, is founded upon a law of mutual exchange. Any person who contributes to prosperity must prosper in turn himself. Sometimes the return will not come from those you serve, but it must come to you from someplace, because that's the law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. As you go daily through your 30-day test period, remember that your success will always be measured by the quality and quantity of service you render, and money is a yardstick for measuring this service. No man can get rich himself unless he enriches others. Now, there are no exceptions to a law. You can drive down any street in America and from your car estimate the service that's being rendered by the people living on that street. Had you ever thought of this yardstick before? It's interesting. Some, like ministers and priests and other devoted people, measure their returns in the realm of the spiritual, but again, their returns are equal to their service. Once this law is fully understood, any thinking person can tell his own fortune. If he wants more, he must be of more service to those from whom he receives his return. If he wants less, he has only to reduce his service. This is the price you must pay for what you want. If you believe you can enrich yourself by deluding others, you can end only by deluding yourself. It may take some time, but just as surely as you breathe, you'll get back what you put out. Don't ever make the mistake of thinking you can avert this. It's impossible. The prisons and the streets where the lonely walk are filled with people who tried to make new laws just for themselves. We may avoid the laws of man for a while, but there are greater laws that cannot be broken. An outstanding medical doctor recently pointed out 6 steps that will help you realize success. 1. Set yourself a definite goal. 2. Quit running yourself down. 3. Stop thinking of all the reasons why you cannot be successful and instead think of all the reasons why you can. 4. Trace your attitudes back through your childhood and try to discover where you first got the idea you couldn't be successful, if that's the way you've been thinking. 5. Change the image you have of yourself by writing out a description of the person you would like to be. And 6. Act the part of the successful person you have decided to become. The doctor who wrote those words is a noted West Coast psychiatrist, Dr. David Harold Fink. Do what the experts since the dawn of recorded history have told you you must do. Pay the price by becoming the person you want to become. It's not nearly as difficult as living unsuccessfully. Make your 30-day test, then repeat it again, and each time it will become more a part of you until you'll wonder how you could ever have lived any other way. Live this new way and the floodgates of abundance will open and pour over you more riches than you may have dreamed existed. Money? Yes, lots of it. But what's more important, you'll have peace. You'll be in that wonderful minority who lead calm, cheerful, successful lives. Start today. You have nothing to lose, but you have a whole life to win. This is Earl Nightingale, and thank you.
There he goes, Earl Nightingale. Hey, stick around. Here's Paul Harvey.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of the serpent, I would whisper to you as I...
Tell you what, man, I'm not good with that. It's too low. And I want to make sure you guys hear that good. Here we go. I don't know why that thing was so low. Here we go. Independent Broadcast Network.
Electrify your metabolism.
Electrify your metabolism with the Independent Broadcast Network, Monday through Friday. Bruce McDonald, AM, 7 a.m. Pacific. Into the Microcosm is 9 Pacific Friday night. And
it's not the
7 Pacific on Saturday. Hey, man, the wind is blowing like the devil.
If I were the devil, if I were the prince of darkness, I'd want to engulf the whole world in darkness, and I'd have 1/3 of its real estate and 4/5 of its population, but I wouldn't be happy until I had seized the ripest apple on the tree. So I'd set about, however necessary, to take over the United States. I'd subvert the churches first. I'd begin with a campaign of whispers. With the wisdom of the serpent, I would whisper to you as I whispered to Eve, do as you please. To the young, I would whisper that the Bible is a myth. I would convince them that man created God instead of the other way around. I would confide that what's bad is good and what's good is square. And the old I would teach to pray after me, Our Father, which art in Washington. And then I'd get organized. I'd educate authors in how to make lurid literature exciting so that anything else would appear dull and uninteresting. I'd threaten TV with dirtier movies and vice versa. I'd peddle narcotics to whom I could. I'd sell alcohol to ladies and gentlemen of distinction. I'd tranquilize the rest with pills. If I were the devil, I'd soon have families at war with themselves, churches at war with themselves, and nations at war with themselves, until each in its turn was consumed. And with promises of higher ratings, I'd have mesmerizing media fanning the flames. If I were the devil, I would encourage schools to refine young intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions. Just let those run wild. Until before you knew it, you'd have to have drug-sniffing dogs and metal detectors at every schoolhouse door. Within a decade, I'd have prisons overflowing. I'd have judges promoting pornography. Soon I could evict God from the courthouse, then from the schoolhouse, and then from the houses of Congress. And in his own churches, I would substitute psychology for religion and deify science. I would lure priests and pastors into misusing boys and girls and church money. If I were the devil, I'd make the symbol of Easter an egg and the symbol of Christmas a bottle. If I were the devil, I'd take from those who have and give to those who wanted until I had killed the incentive of the ambitious. And what'll you bet? I couldn't get whole states to promote gambling as the way to get rich. I would caution against extremes in hard work, in patriotism, in moral conduct. I would convince the young that marriage is old-fashioned, that swinging is more fun, that what you see on TV is the way to be. And thus I could undress you in public, and I could lure you into bed with diseases for which there is no cure. In other words, if I were the devil, I'd just keep right on doing what he's doing.
Paul Harvey. If I was the devil. That's it. We're off the network, so I just want to say goodbye to you guys. I got to go get something to eat, and then I'll check in with Epic and see if we're still going to do that, because we may not do it because it's too much to get into now, but so we'll see. Potentially 9 o'clock we'll be on the network, and if we are, we'll be on here too, so set that bell or whatever, and then you guys can know when we're going to come on. I don't know. We'll see. I'm on the fence. I don't know. We'll see. I got to go eat. So we'll talk to you later.